Welcome to part 1 of my React Apollo tutorial. To start, we're going to use create React app to create a new application. And once that's done, we'll go ahead and start up that project. So just scrolling through the documentation here, you guys can read through this on why to use it, or I'll do more videos about that in the future. This video is just going to be about how to use it specifically in React. So you can skip through this upgrading part because we're starting a new project here. And let's go ahead and go to get started. So the first step is to install Apollo Boost, React Apollo, and GraphQL packages. So I'm going to switch into that folder we just created and go ahead and install those required packages for the Apollo client. So I'm just going to paste that in here. And once that's done, we're going to go ahead and open up our app.js. Well, let's first do yarn start the project up. Then we'll open app.js. So the first thing it wants us to do is to create an Apollo client. So we're going to import Apollo client from Apollo Boost. That's going to create it for us. And then we can use that client by instantiating a new Apollo client, passing in the URL. Let's go ahead and paste that code here. So we're going to import Apollo client from Apollo Boost. I'll go ahead and move this up. Absolute imports should come before relative imports. And we create the new client. So that's it. Your client's ready to start fetching data, it says. But before we hook it up to React, let's try sending a plain query, which is plain JavaScript. So you import GQL from GraphQL tag that compiles this string into an abstract syntax tree. I'll do more videos about that in the future, but for now we just kind of do a GraphQL tag right there and do a promise. And I have another video about promises you can check out. And let's see. Import and body of module. Okay, and we need to move this import back up. So we'll go ahead and cut that, copy paste that. Okay, so we import Apollo client, instantiate the client, and then send the query and console log the result. And we saw that in the console log, so that's all good. So now we can connect our client to React. So now we're going to actually switch this to do the query as a React component instead of plain JavaScript. Now, why did we set it up just to switch it? Well, it was just for demonstration purposes. Now we're actually going to do it in our React component. So this would be the way you typically do it when you're using Apollo in your app. So first, you need to wrap your tree in Apollo provider. This uses the React Context API. If you're familiar with React Redux, there's a provider, a Redux provider, same concept. Basically, any part of the tree inside of this Apollo provider is going to have on the context the Apollo client. It's going to be able to do queries and mutations and things like that using our client, local state updates. So once the Apollo provider is hooked up, we're ready to start requesting data with the query component. So it uses the render prop pattern. If you're not familiar with that, I'll do another video, but I'm not going to cover that here. So first we pass the GraphQL wrapped component, the query. So we can see here, query takes in the query as a prop, and then the children is a function It may look a little weird if you've never seen render props, but it's super easy. So we're going to copy paste this over here. And I don't want this exchange rate component, I just want the query. So I'm going to just grab just this query part here, and I'm going to put that right in my app.js just for this simple example, just to keep things simple. And we can go ahead and get rid of this plain JavaScript query here, because we're going to use the query component. So anywhere inside of the Apollo provider, maybe further down in the tree, maybe this is in another file, but for right now we're just going to nest it directly inside there. Anywhere inside the Apollo provider you can run your query. I'm going to format this, and it looks like it didn't format this. How do they have that over here? Indented in a couple times more. So what that's going to do is run that query that gets the exchange rates, the currency and the rate, and then it's going to call this function each time that state changes. So the loading state, the error state, or the data comes back. So the first time it calls that render prop on line 26, it's going to hit loading ... If there's an error, it's going to say error. So there we go, loading and then our data. So congrats, we just made your first query component. So that's about it. In the next video, we'll go into some of the more knobs you can turn on that query component, and the documentation just explains that we used Apollo Boost, which sets up Apollo Client, Apollo in-memory cache, and all these other things for us that we'll cover in the future, but it's good to know what's going on under the hood. So that's it for this video. Tune into the next video.